Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Such a beautiful Sangha of Vaishnavis and Vaishnavas. I'm honored to be here. So, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, I wanted to speak on this topic of grief and gratitude. And when I thought to talk about this, one devotee was asking, well, where does gratitude fit into the processes of devotional service? And maybe you know the list she's talking about. Maybe she's thinking about the list: hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Or I was wondering if maybe she's thinking about the beginning processes of bhakti, starting with faith, wanting to be around holy people, sadhu sangha, then beginning to serve, and then progressing from there. So not sure exactly what she was thinking, but let me share my reflections on her questions to begin. So I was thinking that gratitude, or just a simple appreciation, is the beginning, maybe even before faith or hearing and chanting and everything. And I was also reflecting this morning, today is the disappearance day of Bhaktitirtha Swami. And I wanted to share a bit about him because I think it's pertinent here. He was from a very, very poor background, and his mother was a very saintly woman. And if she, so he grew up with a mood of, even though they were so poor, he grew up with a mood of abundant gratitude. And even though they were so poor, so if his mom would see any boy who was more poor than they were, she would give away his clothes to that boy. So I think this mood of abundant gratitude equipped him for his trials later in life when he faced racism and so many obstacles on the path. So I think it's a very foundational heart place, heart more than sentiment. It's foundational. So yeah, I was thinking, well, what is faith anyway? Faith begins with trust, right? If I can appreciate someone or something and feel grateful, that builds a kind of trust, maybe a new feeling of belonging, right? Maybe like, oh, well, let me find out who these people are. Maybe I want to hear or I want to associate with them. So maybe a first inkling of thinking that I want to be around holy people, or maybe I belong to God or Krishna, or initially I may feel connected somehow. I belong there. I'm his. And eventually, as we make advancement, he is mine also. So that connectedness, that belonging, that sense of belonging. Otherwise, why would I even care to hear about Krishna or to try to chant his name or remember him, spend time with devotees or whatever else I might do in devotional service? If I haven't stood in wonder at something awesome in his creation, right? The beauty of a sunrise or sunset, the moon and the stars, or just the fact that the sun rises each day, right? Wow. Or even maybe a kind action by another human being, a friend, a parent, or even a stranger who reached out, did something kind that they didn't have to do. That creates appreciation, gratitude, really a sense of awe. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about gratitude in many places. I wanted to share a quote from third canto, for those of you who like verse references. Third canto, chapter 19, verse 36 purport. Srila Prabhupada talks about how every human being, this is Srila Prabhupada being quite heavy, he says, every human being must feel grateful for the benedictions offered by the grace of the Supreme Lord. He says, with a simple heart of gratefulness, we can become Krishna conscious and offer devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And then he speaks even more strongly. He says, get this, he says, those who are actually thieves and rogues don't care or recognize the benedictions offered to them by the Supreme Lord and can't offer him devotional service. Ungrateful persons don't understand how much benefit we're getting by the arrangement of the Lord. This is all still Prabhupada speaking. They enjoy the sunshine and moonshine and get water free of charge, but still they don't feel grateful, but just go on enjoying these gifts of the Lord. So yeah, so then in the end he says, therefore they must be called thieves and rogues. This is sweet Prabhupada, but also heavy Prabhupada. So I would say that gratitude is really the beginning. It's foundational to spiritual consciousness. And sometimes we hear people say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual, right? You've heard that a million times. Well, what does it mean to be spiritual, really? To be spiritual is to be amazed, to live in a sense of amazement. And this is the gift. Okay, here's a beautiful quote from Abraham Maslow. He says, this is the gift, to have the wonderful capacity to appreciate again and again, freshly and naively, the basic goods of life with awe, pleasure, wonder, and even ecstasy. So I would say this kind of consciousness defines bhakti, right? And, Srila Prabhupada was like that. And the saints are like that. And in every chapter of Krishna book, the residents of Vrindavan are in that place of wow. They're expressing their sense of wonder at wonderful Krishna. And they're not taking things or their lives in general for granted. So I wanted to ask you, I heard that this podcast is involved with the dynasty of Yadubara and Vishaka Prabhus. Their two daughters are involved with this. So I'm wondering, did any of you ever see that picture, famous picture? I think it was, I mention it because I think it was taken by Vishaka Devi. A picture of Srila Prabhupada where he's holding in his very delicately, tenderly in his two fingers that golden flower, and he's just glancing at this beautiful golden champak flower, holding it delicately, and he's saying, this is the color of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this sense of wonder, at the gifts I'm receiving every day free of charge, right? The water I need to survive, the air I breathe, the heat of the sun, the coolness of the moon, the people in my life who, okay, maybe they're difficult sometimes, but they're really the ones who make life worth living, right? So, what about the ones who came before us, right? Great teachers, parents, mentors in society, people who exemplified values that I cherish or that I try to live by, or maybe even with all their faults, people who sacrificed for me in so many ways. Or even the people of the future, right? The ones that I'm hoping to leave something for, right? Okay, maybe a house or some inheritance, but what about some truth or some values or maybe some love of kirtan or some charming pastime of Krishna himself that I might have shared with them? Or maybe I might just have shared a sense of why care, right? Or why even try for Krishna consciousness or even have a sense of gratefulness at all? So gratefulness is the lobby to the palace of bhakti, and there is no back door. It's the entranceway to an open heart, a heart of bhakti. It's the entranceway to a sense of belonging to something higher, someone higher beyond the external world, right? And I would say that gratefulness is also, it's a type of a fertilizer that nourishes the seed of bhakti in the heart so that the seed can grow stronger and more luxuriantly. And gratefulness is also a type of rich soil in which the cancer of pride doesn't very easily grow. It keeps us appreciative and humble. Here's a nice quote from one of my favorite teachers of gratitude. He's a Benedictine monk. He says, Brother David Stendelrost, he says, if we're grateful, we're not fearful. And if we're not fearful, we're not violent. If we're grateful, we act out of a sense of enough and not out of a sense of scarcity, and we're willing to share, like Bhakti Swami's saintly mother, right? If we're grateful, we can enjoy the differences between people, and we can be respectful to everybody, and that changes the power pyramid under which we live. Okay, so this all sounds important, and it may help to transform our hearts, but why do I want to talk about grief and gratitude? How can we put those two seemingly opposite emotions together? Can we be grateful for everything? Can we be grateful for wars or abuse or the things that happen that I don't want to happen? Can I be grateful for a significant loss of a beloved friend or partner or child, or the loss of a job, or my health, or the health of someone I love? Or what about the loss of a limb, or maybe the loss of a long-loved pet companion? Can we be grateful for everything? No, we can't be grateful for everything. But we can try to learn to be grateful in everything, in every moment. It's strange and it seems counterintuitive, but suffering also teaches us gratitude. It drags us deeper into ourselves. In normal times, we might treat the love we receive as a reason for self-satisfaction. Maybe we think, I deserve to be loved. But in times of suffering, we might begin to realize how undeserved this love really is and how it should be a cause for thanks. When we're proud, we refuse to feel indebted. But in humble moments, we might ponder how we don't deserve the affection and concern we've received. So here's a thought about these conflicting emotions, again from the wisdom of this Benedictine monk. He says, if we shut our hearts to the pain of the world, our celebrations become superficial. If we let that pain overwhelm our hope, we are lost in the dark. Tears in which pain and joy flow together do justice to life in its fullness. And I would like to add here that grief is a type of longing, maybe for something lost, but longing can also lead us to a sense of belonging. Maybe a new way of seeing, maybe a new something found. I think all of us have heard those stories, or those amazing stories of people like, oh, when someone says, oh, that cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. Or maybe even that divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me, right? I've heard those kind of things before. So counterintuitive, right? So then here's a beautiful quote from, I don't know if any of you have read Robin Wall Kimmerer, beautiful book she wrote called Braiding Sweetgrass. She's an indigenous woman from New York State. She says, even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. She says, I choose joy over despair. Not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift. I heard a story about a man who was a disciple of one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers. His wife had died, and he went to his guru and he told him, Guru Maharaj, I'm ready for sannyas. My wife has died and I didn't even cry. And his wise guru told him, go back, get married again. Because if you're not able to cry when your wife passes away, how will you ever learn to cry for Krishna? So wise, right? So do you know, I don't know if you've heard this before, but Bhakti Yoga, it's a crying school. And we're meant to learn to cry for Krishna. And the pains and sufferings in this world help us and wake us up to the reality of what endures and what will one day vanish. You have in Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada calls these sufferings pinpricks. Pinpricks. It's like, you get poked with a pin and all of a sudden, ouch, there's like a pause and a reflection, like, wow, why pain? Why me? Why, why? The why with a capital W question, right? So maybe in the beginning, moments of grief, we may feel bitter, but when we reflect, as we grieve, we go deeper, we become more introspective. And I would say this happens if we're already rooted in some kind of gratitude. People who are not rooted in gratitude will become bitter when they face the sufferings of this world. So, but grief opens us up to a deeper place and it makes us more vibrant and alive. In Bhagavad Gita, maybe many of you are thinking about this right now, we learn that those who are wise are equal in happiness and distress. But it never says to not have feelings, right? The Gita says that we have to learn to tolerate. To tolerate means to still feel and acknowledge suffering. We're human and we have human emotions, and we need to recognize them and grieve when moments of grief arrive. In the Mahabharata, when Arjuna's son Abhimanyu was so unjustly killed ganged up on really, in the battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna asked Krishna to bring his chariot to that place where his son had been killed so he could see his son lying there. Arjuna went there and he cried and he grieved his son. And then he took up his weapons and proceeded to do his duty in spite of the heartbreaking, painful situation. So unlike in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna dropped his Gandiva bow, but after hearing the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita from Lord Krishna, he still grieved his son. But then he took up his weapons and acted under the order of Krishna. So there's so many instances of grief and consoling of grief in Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna's walking around after the battle, showing empathy to all of the people who suffered. He's consoling Draupadi, his sister Subhadra, Kunti Devi, the Pandavas. They're all overwhelmed with grief. And the great general, grandfather Bhishma, is consoling them all. So there is human suffering, lamentation, even among these great realized souls. So yes, you will miss those you've lost, but you can also be rooted in the knowledge that none of us really ever dies. So don't bypass your grief, recognize it, give it healing time and your deepest and best intention. It's sometimes said that joy is the gift of love and grief is the price of love. Someone who's never learned to love deeply will also not be able to grieve deeply. And grief also dares us to love once more. Could it be possible that I could possibly ever love once again? Right? So before I hear your thoughts, and I'd like to share another quote. Here's something I think that's powerful. The work of a mature person is to carry grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by them. How much sorrow can I hold? That's how much gratitude I can give. If I only carry grief, I'll bend towards cynicism and despair. If I only have gratitude, I can become saccharine and won't develop much compassion for other people's suffering. Grief keeps the heart fluid and soft, which helps make compassion possible. This is a quote from someone named Francis Wade Weller. And here's another something from Robin Wall Kimmerer. She says, if grief can be a doorway to love, I really love this one. She says, if grief can be a doorway to love, then let us all weep for the world we are breaking apart so we can love it back to wholeness again. Yeah. So thank you all so much. I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think?
Thank you so much, Rukmini Prabhu. I'm reveling and just thinking of all of the things you've just said, and there's so many gems that it's overwhelming. First thing in the morning for me to just absorb it. There's so many things that I want to mention.
You're a very appreciative and grateful person, so thank you for that.
I was just checking our chat, and I'm not sure if there's any questions there, and I noticed that Leanne is frozen, so I'm not, but I know she had some questions. Let me just see. Let's see. Her question is, how can we be a better support ourselves when another is feeling grief?
Such a beautiful question. Thank you, Leanne. I love that question. And it's so important because, as devotees, we're always preach, preach, preach. You gotta preach, right? But oftentimes it's so much more powerful just to be present and to just listen. And there's a painful story I'll share with you. There was one devotee in the UK a number of years ago. His little daughter died in a very unfortunate playground accident. She was going down the slide, and her little purse that she had on her shoulder caught on the edge of the slide, and she was strangled and she died. It's a very sad story. And devotees were coming to this father to console him, but he said later that he felt like they were really just trying to satisfy their own need to preach, and they weren't really there for him in his sorrow. So it's again counterintuitive, because sometimes the people who love us the most will be the very ones to say the very most painful things or wrong things. And sometimes just to listen is so much more powerful. So I think as devotees, we need to learn the art of deep, appreciative listening before we speak, before we try to preach. Let's try to hear and really ask, what's on your heart? What can I do? There's another story I'll share with you. There's a man who's a great teacher. His name is Parker Palmer. He's a Quaker. He's a great teacher. He's written many books. And at one point in his life, he was going through a depression. And his friends were coming to him and saying, you'll snap out of it. Don't worry. You're such a great teacher. You've written so many books. It's all going to be okay. And nothing that anyone was saying was really helping him. But he had one friend, he tells the story later, he had one friend who would just show up every Friday and give him a back massage. No words, just showing up every Friday, give him a really nice back rub. And he was saying that's the friend who helped him actually climb out of his depression. So I think it's an important lesson for us to learn to hear before we speak, and really, hear the heart of the person, and not just have like a book of set lines that we pull out. No, we have to be sensitive and understand, who am I speaking to, and what is the situation they're in, and be more sensitive. There's a phrase that's used by another Benedictine teacher. He talks about being a wounded healer. So we can be preaching from our high place of maybe pride, I know so much and I'm going to tell you. Or we can also feel that wound ourselves and speak from a place of humility and woundedness, really, empathy. So that's much more powerful. I hope that helps.
I love that. And Leanne is frozen right now, but I know she'll really appreciate your response, and I know that I have. And there's some questions also in our Zoom chat. One thing that stood out I wanted to appreciate about what you have spoken about this morning or today, this afternoon, where you are, is that gratitude is the antidote to the poison of
Pride.
Yeah, thank you. And that was such a powerful statement. And how did you come to that? How did you come to that nectar drop? How did you?
Well, I just keep my eyes and ears open to learn from great teachers that are all around me. I feel gratitude for great teachers. I'm not. Someone might say that I'm too eclectic, but I feel like there's deep bhakti wisdom coming from everywhere. So I love the wisdom of Srila Prabhupada and our Gaudiya Sampradaya, but I'm also so inspired when I hear it in other people's words. Because sometimes, did you ever notice in yourself, sometimes I just switch off when I'm hearing it in words I've heard before. I think, oh yeah, I've heard that. And my brain switches off. But when I hear it in someone else's words, somehow it's like a wake-up call. Here's another one that I want to share. That this is in, again, from this brother David. I love this one. He says, hope thrives in the midst of hopelessness. Hopelessness is not the opposite of hope. Despair is the opposite of hope. In the midst of hopelessness, hope thrives because it will not give in to despair. Although the situation is hopeless, there is always room for surprise. So be a student of surprise. That's awe. That's the sense of wonder, surprise, right? Despair assigns reality a deadline. Hope knows that there are no deadlines for reality. And that is why hope thrives in the midst of hopelessness. So I really love this quote because this is a man, he was from Austria, and when he was, I believe he was 12 years old, the Nazis invaded his country. So at a time when teenagers are beginning to rebel against the world and their parents, he got the chance to rebel against the Nazis. So this idea of not assigning a deadline for hope because we can live in surprise. And Krishna also says in the Gita that one of the types of people who approaches him is the one who's curious, right? The person who's ready to be surprised. So if we're jaded and we're thinking, I have seen that a million times, I heard it a million times, I can't open my heart to anything because I'm bitter, my heart is closed. Wow, that's a sad place to be. But if we can be open to surprise and be curious for what new wonder, what sense of awe, that's, to me, that's following in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. Check it out. See if I'm wrong. Every chapter of Krishna book, they're in a place of wow, sense of awe, wonderful Krishna, amazement. So there's actually a Sanskrit word for that. It's called chamatkar, which means astonishment. So if we can dwell in that place of astonishment, I think that's a beginning of the spiritual realm. Yeah,
It's amazing. I'm speechless myself. I'm in awe myself. I I'm feeling so inspired. And we have some other questions here. Anuradha asks, how can we let go of the pain of the loss of expectation? I created someone, some expectation of someone's behavior towards me. How can I let go of that pain?
Yeah, reducing expectations is a very good place to be. Reducing expectations, because it's very true that when we have expectations, sometimes I wrote a poem about this actually. Sometimes grace comes in from the most unexpected directions. Like we may be expecting my partner, my husband, my wife, my kids, people at the office, we may be expecting some appreciation or some gratitude, and not get it from those places, right? But it may come sideways. The poet Emily Dickinson talks about seeing on a slant. I wonder what she means by that, but in other words, I may be expecting it's going to come from here and not get it from that direction or that person, but maybe it's going to come from another direction, I know, speak personally, if I can open my heart, when we lost our business, we had 3 stores in the Washington metro area, award-winning, kind of art craft galleries. We were representing small studio artists and jewelry and small home furnishings. And it was, a long run. And when that business closed and we went broke, we were practically homeless, actually. And we didn't even have money to rent an apartment at the time, to tell you the truth. And sometimes the people you expect to help you might not. But then what we noticed is help comes from other places that you never expected. So what can we conclude about that? It's all coming from Krishna. And when we have expectations in a certain direction, grace may come sideways, or from up or down or sideways. So I hope that's helpful. But yeah. Be open for surprise and reduce expectations.
This is balm. This is balm for the heart. That's beautiful. And Kalindi Devi Dasi asks, how can I allow myself to grieve when so many things have happened in my life, to the point of where any new loss just becomes a regular Tuesday?
Wow. Very deep. Thank you so much for opening your heart. Yeah, it's not an automatic pilot. It's not a quick Band-Aid. We have to dwell in that place and really go into a place of deep meditation and allow ourselves to taste that bitterness, actually. And, sometimes the people who are closest to you in your life will be the ones to say, well, you should be over it by now. It's already been a year. It's already been 6 months. But no, grief is something you'll carry with you for the rest of your life, right? And what happens is it turns you into a different person. If you can carry grief and gratitude together, one in each hand, like that, what happens is the grief will turn you into a much deeper, more person who's able to feel and compassion for other people's suffering as well as your own. But if we're not rooted in that foundation, first of all, of gratitude, then the grief can just turn us into bitter people. So grief and gratitude they're twins. They're twins, and they have to be meditated upon together. Like, tell you another story. This is a painful story. Do I have time? Are we about to? Okay, good. So my husband was in a workshop, and there was a beautiful devotee therapist who was leading this workshop, and she asked the devotees in the workshop to share what's the most painful thing that's ever happened to you. And devotees shared different things. And the one who took everybody's breath away was this one devotee woman Vaishnavi, who told the story of losing her son. She said her teenage son, I think he was maybe 19 or something, he was walking on the railroad tracks with his girlfriend. And you know how sometimes young people feel very invincible, right? So they're walking right on the tracks, and they heard a train coming from one direction, so they stepped aside. But then they didn't realize that there was another train coming from the other direction. This will make you cry. And so at the last moment, her beloved son, he pushed his girlfriend off the tracks and saved her life, and he was killed. So this is just unbearable, you know? And then in this session, this devotee therapist said, so you've all shared these painful moments. What was something that came out of that pain that you can share? What was there something helpful that came out of that pain? And she shared this beautiful thing that she said the most painful thing in my life was having lost my son. And I would, in a moment, give my life to have him back. But then she said, but what I realized from this was that if I, just an ordinary woman, can feel so much love for my son, then how much love must Krishna have for each of us? This was her realization. So this is deep. And it's very transformative. You know, her life will never be the same. And the people who heard her story, their lives are also transformed. So I would say sit with it, you know, sit with it and think and meditate and pray. What lessons have come from this loss, or what lessons could come in the future? No? Maybe that's helpful.
This is gorgeous listening to you, and the depth of the love of Krishna is so beautiful. Okay, I love this, because not only are we talking about grief and gratitude, but we're experiencing it on in these moments, and you know, how to feel grief and then keep life moving forward and keep talking about other really important matters and being present with it. So thank you. That's
and be pulled to a deeper place by that grief, because I think we tend to dwell on the surface. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. You know, I see people at the, you know, Sunday program, everything's good, you know, but, you know, to be pulled to that deeper place, it transforms us into something that we were not before, you know. Actually, I'll share another poem. Is there are there more questions?
There is one, but let's hear your poem first, and then we can.
Okay, this is a nice one. This is something from the 12th century Europe. 'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch, to love, to hope, to dream, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools, this love, but a holy thing, to love what death can touch.
That is astounding. Would you read that one more time? I'm sorry. It's so full and
so beautiful. It's so beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it's so poignant. It's like, we can't bypass these human emotions. We can't pretend to be, way, way up here and just operate in our devotional lives from the head space. We have to operate from the heart space, right? And grief and gratitude open the heart. So here, I'll read it again. 'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch, to love, to hope, to dream, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools, this love, but a holy thing to love what death can touch.
That is.
I wanted to share, yeah, thank you. I wanted to share something else that just occurred to me that, we're not meant to be on the platform of Vaidhi Bhakti, which means Krishna consciousness following the rules and regulations forever. Crossing the T's, dotting the I's, I do everything I'm supposed to do. But we're meant to go to a deeper place of spontaneous love when our hearts actually crack open. So this is not outside of the realm of Krishna consciousness. Someone might think, well, where is she getting all this crazy stuff, This is about opening the emotions of the heart. Let me tell you a story that I just thought of that's beautiful. This is from the Desert Fathers. These are early Christians who wanted to get out of Rome and all these places with too much population, and they went out to the desert to just meditate in their spiritual practice. So one of the there were, like senior teachers, mentors, acharyas, and there were younger ones too. So one of the younger ones came to his teacher and he said, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I'm following all the rules, but could there be something more that I could be doing? And this mystic senior teacher, mentor, he put his arms out in the air, and as the story goes, fire just started shooting out of his hands. And he said, yes, if you desire it, you can become holy fire. So I think this is very real for us on the path of Krishna Bhakti. We're not meant to just remain neophytes forever, just criticizing each other, judging each other. She didn't do this, he said that. That's all surface stuff. We have to become essence seekers and go to the deepest place and seek what is that deep place. And grief can be my ally in that search. And gratitude, both.
There's so much depth to what you've just said, and the first thought that came to mind when you had read that poem a second time, where I absorb it, is that in the field of psychology and behavior, there's the attachment or the attunement. So in trauma therapy, they talk about attuned. There's a misattunement, something happens, and then reattunement, how to fix that attunement again. And so then in Bhakti, we're sometimes taught, don't become attached to this material world, or don't become attached. So there's always been that, I've always had that experience of being attuned or attached, or that natural attachment that children have for their families, and then not to be attached. So what you've described here is that experience of being attached, being attuned, allowing that love to flow, and then allowing that ability to grieve fully, so that we can actually experience what love is and dare to do that. So thank you. It's so beautiful. We have a question here from Catherine, and her question is, how do we practice our love for Krishna through relationships in this lifetime while still remaining detached and understanding everything is temporary except our jivas, souls? And thank you for your beautiful shares.
Thank you. I think, we're too much eager for premature detachment and renunciation. And for example, what I was thinking of when you were speaking, and let me try to address the question in that context. When you were speaking about attachment, I was thinking of babies, What happens to a baby that just gets thrown in a dumpster, right? What happens to a baby who never had that opportunity to attach to a loving mother, loving family? That child grows up with a deep lacking and a hole in the heart. So I think Rupa Goswami's teaching is not about detachment and renunciation. Those are not in the list, in Rupa Goswami's list of 64 items of bhakti, if you read Nectar of Devotion. Detachment's not there. But what is there is that we need to learn to become attached to the positive and how I can use whatever gifts I have in the service of Krishna. And that's what Rupa Goswami calls yukta vairagya. Maybe all of you, some of you have heard of that before. But it means, Prabhupada uses the word dovetailing. It's a word that's used in carpentry. There's something called a dovetail joint where you can put I'm not a carpenter, so I don't really know that much, but it's like you use the thing to gain a greater thing, right? A greater strength. So just like you're a therapist, or you're a behavioral therapist.
Yes, counseling. I have my master's in counseling psychology, and then behavior analysis is a second.
Yeah.
Master's, yeah.
So you're using those skills in Krishna's service. And so it's like Ralph Waldo Emerson said, hitch your wagon to a star. Or like, I know I spend time in New York, sometimes you see someone on a bike and they hold on to the back of a truck and you want to say, no, don't do that. But all of a sudden that bike person is going at 40 miles an hour along with the truck. So we can work at a higher velocity by dovetailing our attachments to being used by Krishna. Whatever gifts we have are given by Krishna. So rather than focusing on how do I become detached from all, what's the name of the person who asked the question?
That was Catherine.
Catherine, Catherine, can I ask, what kind of work do you do, or what kind of talents or passions do you have in your life?
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is amazing. I wasn't expecting to even be here, so thank you so much. I am actually starting a new job on Monday in New York, up near Chatham, New York, up by Super Soul Farm with Raghu. So it's going to be working with adults with disabilities. So really beautiful community, and I'll be able to share kirtan and teach yoga, and so that's actually I'm starting that new thing on Monday.
So look at the gift you have in your heart of empathy that many people don't have. That you're deploying, mobilizing your empathy, your compassion to help people who are maybe among some of the most neglected, disregarded people in our society. And you're going to be sharing your heart with them in ways that can open your heart, open their hearts, and open the hearts of, it opened my heart just hearing about it. So rather than, detachment is there. I was just reading this morning in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says the exact example of the tortoise is very important. The tortoise, he can pull his limbs into the shell when he doesn't need to use them, right? When he doesn't need to interact. When there's somebody who wants to fight with me, give me a hard time, I can just pull my feet and hands into my shell. I don't need to interact with that person. So it's there, and it's part of Bhagavad Gita philosophy. But let's think of Rupa Goswami's gift of yukta vairagya, and how can I use my attachments, my abilities, my gifts to bless the world. And in that way, I'll naturally become detached from the things that I'm not interested in, right? If I'm passionate about something, if I'm interested in something, if my heart is engaged, I'll naturally become detached from those things that just don't matter to me so much, right? It's kind of like somebody gives you a yummy sweet ball, you know, you don't care so much about the dry bread that's in your fridge, right? So it's a higher taste. That's described in Bhagavad Gita, second chapter also. So we have to get that higher taste, and then naturally we become detached from the lower tastes, the distastes, I would say. I hope that's helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine, for unmuting and talking about that. Beautiful. We have another question here. Maybe before we close, if anyone has any final questions, please write them in the chat. We have here from Kalindi. How can we deal with anticipatory grief?
Yeah. So all suffering comes from lamentation of the past or fear of the future, right? But there are different kinds of grief. And I've been thinking a lot about anticipatory grief because, you know, someone you love you can see that they're dying. They're little by little, we're losing them. And that's a type of grief. So it's important to dwell with that grief and be present and recognize it. I think our tendency in our society, because it's not acceptable to talk about grief, right? People don't want to hear it. People get very uncomfortable, you know. But we have to dwell with it and recognize it and meditate. What are the gifts I'm learning here, and how can I appreciate this person or this thing more now that they're still with me? You know, I have a very dear friend who's in that kind of situation, and kind of watching her husband kind of withdraw, disappear. So she's finding a beautiful solution by encouraging him and inspiring him to do things with her that he never would do before. You know, sharing things, sharing time, you know, special time, sacred time in doing things that, even if it's just going to the store and buying some cookies, you know, something that he never did before. She always went to the store, he always went to work, but now they're going to the store together and sharing some precious time, precious moments. So, but there are other, you know, going out in nature and sharing precious moments, because this will be the sustenance for your future after that person is gone. So, yeah, anticipatory grief. There's, you know, I could speak for a long, long time about the different facets of grief. There's ancestral grief that's handed down to us from our ancestors. There's grief in never having had a chance to use my abilities. There's grief, sorrow for the world, the loss of environment, you know, so many different types of grief. But I think it's important to dwell with it, to not stuff it down, because that's what our society wants us to do and is prompting us to do, you know, just have that, you know, Coca-Cola, smile, beautiful people, blah, blah, you know. No, sit with it, dwell with it, and feel that, allow yourself to feel that pain. Meditate on what are the gifts here? What are the lessons that I'm learning now? And what are the gifts that will come in the future? You know? Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm just, I'm so in awe of all of the wisdom that has just been delivered in the last 50 minutes. I'm so grateful to hear you speak about so many layers of grief. And I know in our field, we teach a lot of, you know, breathing, you know, for our kids, how to breathe and how to be present in their body. There's a lot of work around vagal nerve stimulation of the vagal nerve starts around the crown of the head and travels down the face and neck and torso. And so doing a little bit of, tapping, etc., can help one get a bit more present in one's experience, so that we're not disassociating, or avoiding or escaping, as you're saying with Coca-Cola, or avoiding or jumping into something else, or not being present. So even though pain and grief are challenging, what I hear you say is that it's really important to be with it.
Yeah. And I there might be people listening to all this and thinking, well, where does she get all this stuff? What does this really have to do with Krishna consciousness? But there, you can link these things to your bhakti. For example, when your mind wanders, or when you are experiencing a deep emotion, you can also breathe in the holy name. You can just Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and then hold that breath, and just sit with it and let it penetrate your heart, for a long time, and then let it out, and do that again and again, So breath is very important, very centering, and it's even described in our Shastras that, if you sit down to chant and your mind's crazy because you saw something on the internet last night, or your husband, your partner, your sister said something, your mind's all disturbed, it's very, very helpful to breathe in like that. Breathe in the holy name, just hold it longer than that first breath, and then just let it out, and do it 3 times, But we have to sit with it, and don't be influenced by that superficial place that our society wants to push us to, like I know one woman, I was doing some grief counseling, and one woman in the group was saying, well, I just have to stay busy. But that's not it, that's not it. Sit with it, remember, worship. So thank you.
So powerful. I think there could be a book written on bhakti and grief, because when I think about books that I've seen around grief, or even that you just made me think of the book called The Artist's Way, where there's like being practices, very present practices daily to just be present in the world, which is sometimes hard for us because life's moving so quickly. Anyway, Rukmini Devi, maybe you'll be the one who writes this book on grief and bhakti. We will cherish every page of that. And so one thought, there was one comment I wanted to share with you, that Paula Joseph had mentioned the story that you had shared about your personal life. She had said she remembers that vividly, and that you dealt with that with so much grace. So I wanted to share that. And so something that we do with our Heart of Bhakti group is that we end with a pearl and a prayer. And we have a lot of people on the Zoom here, so I'm not sure if everyone's going to be able to, but if they can maybe share in the chat, or Anuradha, I don't know if you're able to unmute and share a pearl and a prayer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Prabhu Rukmini. It's amazing. All your voice, the way you say, I really feel it in my body, like really. It was so deep. I'm so thankful for your presence here. And you really make me realize how important it is to have this gratitude all the time. It doesn't matter what is going on, it's like that gratitude. So I'm really thankful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this normal day, right? Thank you for this normal day. Thank you very much.
It's beautiful. And let's see. Here's a pearl and a prayer from let's see, Nartaki Radha. That's a beautiful name. Being present in the experience of life allows us to see more than what meets the eye. Sending a prayer for all of our collective grief, that we may be able to find sparks of Krishna magic pointing us back to gratitude. It was beautiful.
Thank you so much.
And Shraddhanjali shares, oh, Shraddhanjali! Oh my goodness! Hare Krishna!
My dear friends!
She was here visiting us in Maui a few years ago. It was so nice. She said, thank you for this hour of Bhakti nourishment. It is nourishment. Thank you so much. And Sharva Mangala Radha shares, Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I would like to share my deep gratitude for your heartfelt sharing, which was like a healing for me. Thank you from my heart. Yours, Sharva Mangala Radha Devi Dasi. Okay, and let's see, Satya Devi or Dattarayi Devi, would you like to share a pearl and a prayer before we close today? They might be.
Oh, thank you so much. It went deep and opened up so many doors I didn't know exist. Thank you. Jai Radha.
Jai Shri Radha. Jai Shri Krishna. Thank you.
Mabel, I put mine in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Okay, Satya Devi's pearl is looking at grief in various aspects of life. That's it, so her pearl. And prayer, thank you to Rukmini Prabhu and Srila Prabhupada for continuing to understand Bhakti in all its various petals.
Beautiful.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for this sacred Sangha. It was really a delight for me. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much, Rukmini Prabhu. I have no real... my words will not get deep enough to how grateful I am for you being here. And thank you, everyone, for bearing with all of the technical acrobatics and everything that occurred today. We're going to be figuring out how to do this as a podcast and a Zoom at the same time. I appreciate your patience. So thank you so much, Rukmini Prabhu. Panchakalpa Trubhyas cha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Purifying ourselves in the world ki jai.
His Grace Rukmini Prabhu ki
Jai. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hare Krishna.